I am not beneath anyone here, and don't ever talk to me or anyone like that again," the quiet elderly waitress said calmly. She had built hospitals in 3 countries. She had sat across from heads of state. She had signed deals that moved markets. Tonight, she was carrying their soup. The women at table 9 didn't look up when she approached. Not once. One of them snapped her fingers in the air, the way you'd flag down a cab in the rain, and slid her empty glass to the edge of the table without a word. The waitress picked it up. She didn't flinch. She didn't stiffen. She simply looked at them, and in that look was something those women would never be able to explain afterward. Not to their friends, not to their husbands, not even to themselves. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hurt. It was the quiet of someone who already knows. They had no idea who was standing in front of them, and by the time they found out, it was already too late. Her name is Denise Reeves, 52 years old, Birmingham, Alabama. And before we go any further, this is where you need to start. Her mother, Dorothy, woke up every morning at 5 a.m. She ironed her uniform in the dark so she wouldn't wake the children. She took 2 buses to reach the homes of families who never once asked her last name. Families who left notes on the counter instead of speaking to her directly. Families who had a separate bathroom she was expected to use. Dorothy cleaned those homes for 31 years. She never complained. Not once. Not in front of Denise. But Denise watched. She watched her mother's hands, how they cracked in winter, how they moved without rest, how they never stopped. And she made herself a promise so deep she never even said it out loud. She just worked. 3 jobs through college. Accounting by day. Warehouse inventory on weekends. She didn't sleep much. Didn't have time to. After graduation, she started a logistics company out of a spare bedroom in a rented apartment. 1 laptop. 1 folding table. A phone she shared the bill on with her cousin. Within 4 years, she had 12 employees. Within 9, she had contracts on 2 continents. Then the recession hit. She lost almost everything. Not everything, but close enough that most people would have stopped, would have taken it as a sign, would have found a reason to believe the world was telling them something. Denise didn't believe in signs like that. She rebuilt. Quietly. Methodically. Without announcement. And this time she went global. And tonight, she is standing in a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, in a black apron, carrying soup. Denise Reeves did this with every acquisition. No announcements. No introductions. She walked in unrecognized and watched how people behaved when they thought no one important was looking. You might be asking yourself why. And we'll get there. But first, you need to see what happened at Table 9. Table 9 had been seated for 20 minutes before the first insult landed. It wouldn't be the last. Vivian Hartwell Cross, 54 years old. Greenwich, Connecticut. 3rd-generation wealth. The kind that doesn't come from building anything, but from inheriting everything and spending a lifetime making sure no one forgets it. The past year had not been kind to her balance sheets, though you wouldn't have known it from the way she carried herself. She arrived at Meridian that evening the way she arrived everywhere, as though the room were already failing her before she had taken her seat. Her husband, Richard, sat to her left. Quiet in the way men become quiet after decades of choosing not to disagree with Vivian. Across from them, 2 business associates, both male, both careful, who laughed precisely when Vivian laughed and stopped precisely when she stopped. This was the table Denise was assigned to. The first moment came over wine. Denise brought a Bordeaux, the one written on the order slip. Vivian looked at the bottle, then looked at Denise, and her expression shifted. Not into confusion, into something more deliberate than that. She said, loud enough for the table beside them to turn. "That is not what I ordered. I said the Burgundy. Do you people not write things down?" Denise looked at the slip. She looked at Vivian. She looked at the slip again. She said nothing. She was right the first time. She returned the bottle, brought the correct one, set it down without a word and moved on. The second moment came a few minutes later. One of the associates made a comment about a property deal, somewhere in the South. Vivian laughed and said, without lowering her voice, that she could never quite understand the accent down there. Then she glanced toward Denise, who was nearby refilling water, and said it again slower as if for emphasis. The table laughed. Denise's hand did not shake on the pitcher. Not once. But then came the moment that changed the temperature of the entire room. Tia Okonkwo was 19 years old. First week on the floor. She was the kind of young woman who triple-checked everything and still second-guessed herself. Not because she was incompetent, but because she cared too much about getting it right. She was moving past table 9 with a tray of water glasses when her foot caught the edge of the service mat. One glass tipped. Water, just water, landed near the edge of Vivian's chair. Not on her. Near her. What followed was not a reaction. It was a performance. Vivian pushed back from the table as though she'd been struck. She looked at Tia the way you look at something you found on the bottom of your shoe, and she said clearly, deliberately, so the whole section could hear. Get her away from my table. These people have no business being here. These people. Tia didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat had closed. Her eyes filled. Not with tears that fell, but with the kind that sit there suspended because you are too determined to hold yourself together to let them go. She picked up the glass. She walked to the back. The table at 9 resumed their conversation as if nothing had happened. Richard refilled his own glass. The associates went back to their deal. Vivian smoothed her napkin across her lap. Denise had seen all of it. She had seen it before. Not here. Not in a restaurant. In a house where her mother moved without being spoken to. In a room where the woman doing the work was not considered part of the room. And she had made a decision. There was someone else in that restaurant. He had been there since before Denise arrived. Before Vivian Hartwell Cross made her entrance. Before any of it. He was sitting in the far corner booth, the one angled toward the room, away from the windows. Dark suit. No tie. A tablet on the table in front of him, and a glass of water he hadn't touched. He wasn't eating. He was watching. We'll come back to him. In the back hallway, past the kitchen, past the linen shelves, just before the staff lockers, Denise found Tia. She was standing with her back against the wall and her arms crossed tight over her chest. Not crying. Past crying. Just still. The way a person goes still when they are using every remaining piece of themselves to hold the rest together. Her hands were shaking. Denise stood in front of her and didn't say much at first. She reached out and straightened Tia's collar. Slowly, deliberately. Then she said, "You're not losing anything tonight." Tia looked up. "I need this job. I can't have a complaint on my first week. I can't." Denise looked at her for a moment. "I know," she said. "Go back out when you're ready. I'll handle table 9. The floor manager, a man named Jeffrey, 15 years in the industry, the kind of person who had learned to absorb other people's discomfort as a professional skill, pulled Denise aside near the service station. He spoke quietly, with the practiced calm of someone delivering a warning they've delivered before. "Just get through the night," he said. "Please, don't make trouble." Denise looked at him, not unkindly, but directly. "I never make trouble, Jeffrey," she said. "I just don't run from it." He opened his mouth, closed it. She was already walking back toward the floor. What neither Jeffrey nor anyone else on that floor fully understood was this. The Hartwell Cross family owned Meridian. Not managed. Not invested in. Owned. One of 11 hospitality properties in their portfolio. Held the way that family held everything. Tightly, and with the assumption that ownership meant immunity. They came in when they wanted. They sat where they wanted. They spoke to the staff the way Vivian had spoken to Tia, and nothing was ever said, because nothing was ever going to be said. Everyone moved around that table carefully, hoping tonight would not be the night it went wrong. The decision about Meridian had not been made. Not by the numbers. Not by the offer. By what happened next. Tonight was that night. And in the corner booth, the man with the tablet glanced up from his screen. He had been watching table 9 for the better part of an hour, and he had seen enough. He typed something, set the tablet face down on the table, and waited. Denise had just returned to table 9 with the entrees when Vivian raised one hand. Not to get her attention, but to stop her. The way you stop traffic. She looked at her plate. Then she looked up at Denise. Then, and this was the part that made the couple at the next table go very still, She lifted the plate and held it out, as if presenting evidence. "This is cold," she said. Not to Denise specifically. To the table. To the room. And you. And here she paused, letting the pause do its work. "Look like you've never seen the inside of a fine restaurant before tonight." The two associates smiled into their glasses. Richard said nothing. The couple to the left of table 9 stopped their conversation mid-sentence. A man 2 tables back set down his fork. A woman near the window looked over, then looked away, then looked back. Nobody intervened. Nobody said a word. Denise stood there. She did not move immediately. She did not respond immediately. She set the plate back down on the table, carefully, without a sound, and she straightened up to her full height. And she took one slow breath. What crossed Denise Reeves' face in that moment was not anger. It was not embarrassment. It was clarity. She looked directly at Vivian Hartwell Cross, and she said, quietly enough that the room had to lean in to hear it, "I am not beneath anyone here. And don't ever talk to me or anyone like that again." That was all. Somewhere behind her, a fork hit the floor. Nobody moved to pick it up. Her face did something complicated, something she couldn't quite control. The composure was still there, just barely, but underneath it, something had shifted. She was recalculating, rapidly. She opened her mouth. What Vivian Hartwell Cross said next, she would spend a long time wishing she could take back. Vivian Hartwell Cross did what people like her always do when they feel the ground shift beneath them. She reached for authority. She pushed back from the table, stood up, and in a voice calibrated to carry, to reach the kitchen, the bar, the front entrance, every corner of that dining room, she said, "I want her fired. Right now. Tonight. I want her out of this building before I finish my next glass of wine." Jeffrey was at the table in under 30 seconds. His eyes went to Denise first, apologetic, pleading, the silent language of someone saying, "Please, just let this go." And then to Vivian, where they settled into the careful blankness of professional deference. He opened his mouth. He didn't get a single word out, because that was the moment the man from the corner booth stood up. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice to announce himself. He simply rose from his seat, straightened his jacket, and walked across the dining room at the pace of someone who has never once in his professional life needed to hurry to be taken seriously. He stopped at table 9. He reached into his inside jacket pocket, and he placed a business card on the white tablecloth, directly in front of Vivian Hartwell Cross, with the quiet precision of someone laying down a final card in a game the other player didn't know they were losing. He had been briefed before he ever walked into the room. He said, "Mrs. Hartwell Cross, my name is Jonah Adler. I'm legal counsel and chief of staff for the Reeves Group." He let that settle. "I believe you're familiar with the acquisition offer on your restaurant portfolio, the one that's been sitting on your attorney's desk and signed for the past 6 weeks. Denise Reeves already controlled them. Not Meridian specifically. Something larger than that. The Reeves Group today operates across 19 countries. Infrastructure, supply chain, private equity holdings, a foundation that funds workforce development programs in 6 American cities. Denise Reeves is worth, conservatively, $4.3 billion. Vivian Hartwell Cross had been doing business with that woman's portfolio for 14 months without knowing her name. 14 months earlier, through a series of carefully structured acquisitions, the Reeves Group had quietly accumulated a significant minority stake in the parent company that held the Hartwell Cross Hospitality Division. Enough to make every major decision contingent on her approval, but not enough to make Vivian irrelevant. Not yet. The offer sitting on Vivian's attorney's desk, the one unsigned for 6 weeks, was the next step. A full operational buyout. The move that would make the arrangement permanent. The move that Vivian Hartwell Cross had been stalling on while she ate in her own restaurant and snapped her fingers at the staff. Meridian. All 11 properties. The leases. The licensing agreements. All of it. The two associates at the table stopped breathing. Richard Hartwell Cross set down his glass. Vivian's eyes moved from Jonah Adler's face to the business card on the table, and then slowly, with the specific horror of watching a door close that she could not stop, to Denise. Denise looked back at her. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She didn't need to do either. Jonah Adler continued, his tone unchanged, measured, professional, almost gentle in the way that precision can sometimes sound like gentleness. Ms. Reeves makes it a practice to personally evaluate the culture of any property she's considering bringing under the Reeves Group umbrella. The people, the environment, how staff are treated. I attend every evaluation. That is standard. Not because anything is expected to happen, because that is how the Reeves Group operates. He paused. She's been here for the better part of the evening. I think it's fair to say she's seen everything she needed to see. The Hartwell Cross family had been in financial trouble for 3 years. Not the kind of trouble that makes the papers. The quiet kind, managed through lawyers and carefully worded statements, and the performance of normalcy at restaurants like this one. Debts restructured. Assets quietly repositioned. A family spending at the rate of wealth they no longer fully possessed. The Reeves Group acquisition offer was not one option among many. It was the option. It was the only serious offer on the table. And it had been sitting there for 6 weeks while Vivian Hartwell Cross went to galas and spoke loudly in restaurants and snapped her fingers at women whose names she never bothered to learn. The woman she had humiliated in front of a full dining room. The woman she had just demanded be removed from the building. That woman held the pen. Vivian Hartwell Cross stood at her own table, in her own restaurant, and said nothing. For perhaps the first time in a very long time. Nothing at all. There was no explosion, no raised voice, no dramatic gesture, no moment designed for applause. That was the part that stayed with everyone who was in that room. Denise reached around to the back of her waist and untied her apron. She folded it. Once, then again, with the same unhurried care she had brought to everything else that evening. She walked to the bar and placed it down on the counter, smoothed it flat with one hand. Then she turned back to the room. She looked at Vivian Hartwell Cross, not with contempt, not with triumph, with the steady, level gaze of someone who had already finished. She said, "I came here tonight because I make it my business to understand the people I'm about to work with. Not from a report, not from a financial filing. In person. You showed me exactly who you are. Every part of it. And I want you to know, I appreciate the clarity." She didn't wait for a response. She turned. And she did something that nobody in that dining room expected. She walked the floor. She stopped at the service station first, where 2 junior servers had been watching the entire evening unfold with the careful stillness of people who have learned that visibility in moments like this comes at a cost. She stopped at the kitchen pass and thanked the sous chef. Thanked him specifically for the precision of the service, for the standard he held his team to regardless of what was happening on the other side of the door. She found Jeffrey near the back and shook his hand. Told him he had managed an impossible situation with more grace than most people would have. And then she found Tia. Tia was near the back hallway, straightening things that didn't need straightening. The particular busyness of someone who doesn't know where else to put themselves. Denise stopped in front of her. She didn't make a speech. She just looked at her and said quietly, "You did your job well tonight. Don't let anyone make you forget that." The dining room was still watching. All of it. Every table. Nobody was pretending not to anymore. Jonah Adler returned to table 9 for the last time. He didn't sit down. He stood at the edge of the table, hands clasped, and delivered the information the way he delivered everything. Directly, without ornament. The Reeves Group acquisition offer, he said, was formally withdrawn. Effective immediately. Their legal team would be in contact with the Hartwell Cross attorneys to confirm the termination in writing. He thanked them for their time. Then he picked up his tablet from the corner booth and walked out. In the year that followed, the Hartwell Cross portfolio entered restructuring. 3 properties sold in the first 8 months. 2 more before the year was out. Meridian was purchased by a group called the Groundwork Collective. 2 women, both former service industry workers. Referred through a workforce development network the Reeves Foundation had funded for 2 years. They kept every member of the staff, including Tia. Justice doesn't announce itself. It simply settles. That was not the point. That was not what Denise came for. The story doesn't end there. 3 months later, Denise Reeves stood in front of a building. Not a corporate headquarters. Not a trading floor. Not the kind of building that makes the financial press. A training center. 4 floors. Natural light. A kitchen that smelled like fresh paint. The Reeves Foundation Vocational Institute opened on a Tuesday morning in March. No celebrity guest. No political fanfare. Just a ribbon, a pair of scissors, and roughly 200 people who had shown up because someone had told them that what was inside those doors was real and free, and theirs if they wanted it. The program covers 3 tracks: culinary arts, hospitality management, business development, full curriculum, credentialed instructors, wraparound support, childcare, transit assistance, placement services, because Denise had spent enough time in the real world to know that access without infrastructure is just a gesture. Every seat, free of charge, no application fee, no income threshold, no requirement except the willingness to show up. Tia Okonkwo was in the first cohort, 19 years old, hospitality management track. She had received the letter from the foundation 4 weeks after that night at Meridian. She had read it 3 times before she believed it was addressed to her. Denise stood at the front of the room that morning and looked out at the faces assembled. Young, older, every kind of background, every kind of story. And she was quiet for a moment before she spoke. Not for effect, because she meant what she was about to say, and she wanted to make sure she said it correctly. She said, "My mother cleaned other people's homes for 31 years. She did it with grace and with skill and with a dignity that most people in those houses never thought to notice. The world told her that made her invisible. It told her that the work she did with her hands didn't count the same way as the work being done above her. She never got to see what I built. But everything I built for her. Every person in this room has something the world hasn't finished accounting for yet. I'm not here to give you anything. I'm here to make sure nothing is in the way." The room was very still. There is a particular kind of power that the world rarely photographs. It doesn't close deals in glass towers. It doesn't arrive in a car with tinted windows. It doesn't need a title on a door or a profile in a magazine to confirm that it exists. Sometimes it looks like a woman in a black apron, standing in the middle of a dining room that was designed to make her feel small, choosing, with full awareness, complete intention, and absolute calm, not to shrink. She had carried their soup. She had absorbed their contempt. None of it had reached her. She never needed them to know who she was. She already knew. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who has been made to feel small in a room that had no right to diminish them. Someone who is rebuilding. Someone who needs to be reminded that dignity is not something anyone can hand you or take away.